The Galactic Council Hall was a place where fear walked before any living creature did. A place where the most powerful species dared not let their guard down even for a heartbeat. Every corner of the massive chamber was filled with warriors who represented their empires with pride, strength, and lethal force. Giant reptilian soldiers with armored scales guarded the doors, standing like mountains carved out of living stone, their golden eyes scanning every shadow. Metallic insect fighters clicked their sharp limbs in perfect rhythm, each one holding a glowing spear that could cut through starship hulls. Psychic avian species floated in the air above the council, their feathers shimmering with energy that could crush a weak mind just by looking at them. Every species, no matter how peaceful or diplomatic, entered this hall armed with the deadliest weapon their culture could create, because the council was not just a place of political decisions. It was a battlefield waiting to happen. And yet, on this particular day, something happened that made every alien freeze, something that felt so unnatural, so impossible, so quietly terrifying that even the bravest warriors felt their weapons grow heavier in their hands. The humans arrived. They did not march like conquerors. They did not enter with massive suits of armor or advanced weapons. They walked in calm, slow, steady steps as if the hall was nothing more than a peaceful garden. The human diplomat stepped forward first, wearing a simple navy blue suit, smiling politely at the frightened galaxy around him. But it was the guards behind him that made every alien inhale sharply. They wore simple black suits, almost too simple for such a dangerous place. No guns hung on their belts. No arm blades folded from their sleeves. No energy shields shimmered around their bodies. No armor plates protected their chests. Nothing. Not a single visible weapon or defensive tool. They were completely unarmed. And that terrified everyone in the room. Because the galaxy knew one truth about Earth. Humans came from a death world. A world where storms ripped trees out of the ground, where giant animals hunted at night, where volcanoes erupted without warning, where diseases evolved faster than cures, where survival itself was a daily war. The Council always whispered the same thing. If a species could survive Earth, they could survive anything. Humans were dangerous not because of their weapons, but because of what they naturally were. But today, they brought none of that danger with them. Or at least, none that the aliens could see. As the unarmed guards walked deeper into the hall, an unusual silence spread. Even the psychic avians paused their mental songs. Nothing in the galaxy made sense about what the humans were doing. The reptilian general from Korath Prime hissed loudly, his deep voice echoing through the chamber as he leaned toward his fellow generals. Why are they unarmed? Are they mocking us? A metallic insect captain clicked two sharp limbs together, sparks flying from the impact. No species enters the council unarmed. It is suicide. Humans must be planning something. A thin avian diplomat shivered, her wings trembling from leftover psychic echoes. They are hiding something. I feel it. Something deep. Something old. She turned her head sharply toward the human guards. Their eyes met hers for a second. A second too long. A second too heavy. Her feathers instantly dimmed. Inside her mind, something cold pressed against her thoughts. She looked away immediately, heart pounding, breath shaking. Their minds are too quiet, she whispered, trembling. Quiet minds are the most dangerous. But the humans simply walked forward, calm like a still lake, steady like they had walked through halls much deadlier than this. The diplomat stopped at the center of the chamber, waiting for the council speaker to address him. The guards positioned themselves behind him with perfect synchronization, but not too perfect. Their movements were smooth, almost gentle, but beneath that softness, there was something hidden, something sharp, something coiled, something waiting. The speaker, a massive crystalline creature with a voice that echoed through the air like ringing glass, finally spoke. Humans of terror, he said carefully, explain why your guards are unarmed. This is a direct violation of council protocol. Every alien leaned forward. Every guard raised their weapon. Every psychic being readied their mental defenses. Yet the human diplomat simply smiled, a soft, warm smile that somehow made the hall even more tense. Our guards follow standard Terran diplomatic protocol, he said calmly. They carry no weapons. The council erupted. Angry shouts. Shocked gasps. Confused whispers. It was chaos for a moment. Every species had the same fear. If a human guard had no weapon, it meant something else was replacing it. Something worse. Because humans never did something without a reason. And the galaxy had learned, nothing humans did was ever simple. The reptilian general slammed his tail on the floor. Impossible. No species trained for war sends unarmed guards into a hall full of armed warriors unless they have a secret weapon. The avian psychic leader narrowed her eyes. Or unless they themselves are the weapons. The metallic insect commander tried to scan the humans with a high-frequency beam, but the device crackled, sparked, and died instantly. He hissed in frustration. I cannot read them. Their energy signatures are distorted. The hall grew colder. The humans stood there silently. Still. Not blinking. Not moving. Their calmness terrified the galaxy more than any gun could. The diplomat opened his mouth to speak again, but suddenly, an insectoid ambassador gasped and stumbled backward, clutching his head. A psychic tremor ran through him like a shockwave. He had accidentally brushed against the mind of one of the human guards. He screamed. Not a scream of pain. A scream of something deeper. Fear. Ancient fear. Primal fear. His limbs twitched, and he collapsed to the ground, shaking. His fellow troops rushed to him, scanning his mind. They all froze as they saw what he saw. Something impossible. Something horrifying. Something buried inside the guard's consciousness like a sleeping beast. Something that should not exist inside any sentient being. The psychic healer whispered in terror. He saw darkness. Fire. Blood. But not destruction. Training. Discipline. They are not empty of weapons. They are filled with them. The human guard didn't move. Didn't react. He simply blinked once, slow and calm, as if acknowledging the psychic's fear, but not apologizing for it. Weapons were raised again. The tension rose like storm clouds ready to explode. The human diplomat remained perfectly still. There is nothing to fear, he said softly. His voice echoed with unnatural calm. Our guards are unarmed by design. Terran law forbids weapons in diplomatic environments. That single sentence spread across the room like wildfire. Terran law forbids weapons? Humans, the species known for surviving chaos, for fighting monsters, for building weapons that made entire empires nervous, had a rule against carrying weapons? No one believed it. No one trusted it. No one understood it. And that confusion only made things more terrifying. The reptilian general leaned to his second-in-command. What kind of species survives a death world without using weapons? The metallic insect officer tilted its head, antennae twitching. Or worse, what kind of training replaces the need for weapons? The psychic avians felt their feathers return to full tension. Something was happening beneath the surface. Something too big for their minds to read. Something too quiet to detect. The human guards stood patiently, breathing slowly, hearts steady. They scanned the hall with gentle eyes, but every emotion behind those eyes was hidden, perfectly hidden. Something deep inside their stillness felt wrong, felt heavy, felt like standing near a sleeping volcano. No heat, no sound, no movement. But one wrong step, one wrong noise, one wrong weapon drawn. Boom. The entire council felt it. For the first time in centuries, the hall felt like prey standing in front of something that hunted without claws, hunted without blades, hunted without technology. Something that hunted using only itself. A strange fear crept through every species. Not loud fear. Not wild fear. Quiet fear. The most dangerous kind. Because no one knew what the humans were hiding. No one understood why they were so calm. And the galaxy feared calm humans more than angry ones. Then the light dimmed slightly. A gust of cold air swept through the hall. A strange vibration echoed through the walls. No speaker announced anything. No alarm sounded. But every alien felt something shift in the air. Something dark. Something old. Something waking. Something watching. And the humans smiled. The vibration in the council hall grew stronger. A low hum running under the floor as if something massive was breathing beneath the building. and while every alien guard tightened their weapons, the human guards simply stood there like shadows carved from calmness, their eyes moving slowly, gently, but their silence felt like a storm waiting for the right moment to break open. The reptilian general snarled and activated his plasma blade, the energy burning bright blue. But even he hesitated when one human guard shifted his foot only an inch. So small a movement yet so unbelievably controlled that it looked like a predator adjusting its balance before a kill. The psychic avian elders tried to read the humans' emotions again, but they instantly recoiled as if they had touched a burning star, their feathers trembling violently, their energies flickering like dying light. They saw nothing. No anger. No fear. No pride. Only a cold, peaceful void inside the human minds, like the calm at the center of a hurricane. One of the insectoid warriors clicked anxiously, his metallic limbs shaking. "Why are they not reacting to the alarm?" he demanded. But the truth was even the humans didn't seem surprised by the sudden shift in the hall, as if they knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't, something the council was blind to. The human diplomat kept his hands folded calmly in front of him, eyes lowered slightly as if he was listening to something that no one else could hear. When the crystalline speaker shouted for an explanation, the human diplomat lifted his head very slowly, and that tiny movement made every alien tense, because there was something in his expression, a sadness, a heavy emotional weight, almost like regret, that didn't belong in a room full of armored warriors. "You asked why our guards carry no weapons," he said, his voice soft, almost painful. "Perhaps you will understand soon." The speaker demanded clarity, but the human diplomat only sighed quietly, the kind of sigh that came from someone who had lived through too many tragedies, too many battles, too many buried memories. The avian elder's voice cracked as she whispered, "What are you hiding, human?" And in that moment, the lights flickered again, and a distant explosion shook the far end of the council hall. The walls vibrated violently, tiny fragments of crystal falling like dust from the ceiling, and suddenly a blood-red alarm lit up across the chamber. "Unregistered vessels breaching council airspace," a guard shouted. "Unauthorized troops inbound." The galaxy's most dangerous warriors formed defensive lines instantly, energy shields igniting, plasma rifles raised, psychic barriers rising like glowing wings around their leaders, but the human guards did not move even an inch. Their stillness was wrong. Terrifying. It felt like the quiet before the universe snapped. The reptilian general barked at them, "Defend yourselves, humans." But the humans remained in their positions, eyes calm, breathing steady, almost heartbreakingly calm, as if they had accepted something before anyone else even knew what was happening. Another explosion rocked the hall, this one closer, and alien soldiers began shouting as their comms lit up with emergency signals. A violent race known across the galaxy, the Valen Raiders, had breached the outer gates. The Velans were infamous for loving chaos, for attacking without reason, for slaughtering civilians just to prove they were alive. They had 9 hearts, reinforced bones, thicker skin than council armor, and weapons that burned through metal like butter, and they were charging toward the hall with the hunger of predators who had tasted blood too many times. The galaxy panicked. Everyone except the humans. One avian soldier cried out, "The Velans are monsters. Why aren't you preparing for battle?" But the humans only exchanged a quiet glance, the kind of glance spoken without words, a silent communication built from years of training and pain, a look that said, "It is time." Yet they lifted no weapons. They activated no shields. They tightened no stance. They just breathed. Slow, deep, peaceful. The metallic insect commander trembled as he watched them. "Why are they calm?" he whispered. "What do they know that we do not?" And then, the psychic echo finally hit the hall like a cold wind. It wasn't from the Velans. It wasn't from the alarms. It came from the humans. Not a shout, not a scream, not a weapon, just a feeling. A deep, emotional pressure that filled the air like invisible gravity. Sadness. Heavy sadness. Not fear. Not panic. Not rage. Pure sorrow. Every alien felt it like a weight pressing on their chest. The avian elder gasped, tears forming in her eyes involuntarily. Why are the humans sad?" she whispered shakily. The human diplomat looked at the council with heartbreaking calm. Because violence is about to begin, he said softly. And we carry no weapons because Terran law demands that diplomats must protect life above all else. Before anyone could question him, the doors at the far end of the hall burst open, metal exploding inward as Valen raiders stormed through. Massive creatures with spiked armor fused to their skin, glowing red eyes, weapons crackling with plasma heat. They roared like beasts hungry for war, charging with furious speed toward the council, ready to slaughter everyone inside. And in that single horrifying moment, the first Valen swung his plasma axe at one of the human guards. The galaxy expected the human to die instantly. Instead, the human raised his hand slowly, not in defense, not in panic, but with a softness that made no sense in the middle of a violent attack, and something inside the hall changed. The air itself seemed to freeze. The Valen's axe stopped mid-swing, inches away from the human's face, not because the human blocked it, not because of a shield, but because the Valen's own body refused to move forward. Something in the human's eyes, something quiet and ancient, made the attacker hesitate. And then, the human finally moved. One step, one breath, one motion, and the hall would never forget what happened next. The moment the human took that single quiet step forward, the entire hall seemed to exhale as if the universe itself understood something terrible was about to happen. Something hidden behind the calm faces of the human guards, something the galaxy had been blind to for centuries. The Valen warrior who had frozen mid-swing suddenly felt an overwhelming pressure crush down on him. Not physical, not psychic, but something deeper, something carved into the human's presence, an emotional force older than every weapon in the room. His hands trembled, the plasma axe flickering as fear, real, raw fear, rushed through him. A fear he had never felt in his entire life as a bloodthirsty raider. The human guard looked at him with gentle eyes, almost sorrowful eyes that carried the weight of someone who didn't want to harm anyone, yet knew harm was coming whether he wished it or not. And then, in a movement so soft it seemed impossible, the human simply tilted his head. That tiny gesture made the Valen flinch backward as though struck by lightning. Before the alien could recover, the human moved again. No sound, no warning, no wasted motion. Just a smooth shift of his body, and suddenly the Valen was airborne, thrown across the hall without the human even appearing to use force. He hit the wall with a bone-rattling crack and fell to the floor unconscious, and the entire council gasped as they realized the human hadn't even raised his fists. He had simply redirected momentum, like a dancer gently moving through the air, and yet the effect was devastating. The other Valen raiders roared in fury and charged, their heavy boots shaking the floor, their plasma blades cutting through the air like burning comets, but the humans did not step back. They moved forward with heartbreaking calm, as if stepping into a storm they had walked through too many times before. One guard reached out and caught a Valen's wrist mid-swing, his fingers closing gently, not aggressively, yet the Valen screamed as his weapon fell from his hand. His arm locked in pain as the human twisted it with controlled precision, forcing the raider to the ground without breaking a single bone. Another guard dodged a plasma spear by leaning just an inch to the side, the weapon slicing past his face by the width of a breath, and before the Valen could attack again, the human tapped the creature's chest with 2 fingers, just 2, and the raider collapsed as if all the strength had been drained from his body. The aliens watching this from behind their shields began trembling. They had never seen combat like this. No shouting, no rage, no glory, no violence for dominance. This was something else. Something emotional. Something trained not for killing, but for ending the fight before death could happen. The avian psychic elder felt her wings quake as she whispered, "They do not fight to win. They fight to stop harm." And the realization hit her so hard she nearly fell from the air. Humans were not calm because they were confident. They were calm because they were grieving. They were grieving the violence they knew they would have to unleash. The reptilian general watched with wide eyes as one human guard vaulted over a Valen shoulder, landed behind him, and gently pressed a nerve in the back of the creature's neck, causing him to collapse like a puppet whose strings had been cut. This is impossible," the general whispered. "How can unarmed humans defeat armed Velans?" But he already knew the answer. Because humans weren't unarmed. Humans were never unarmed. Their bodies were weapons. Their instincts were weapons. Their pain was a weapon. Their compassion was a weapon. And none of it required metal. The metallic insect captain scanned the human guards in panic, antennas shaking violently. Their heart rates, they are steady, he sputtered. Their breathing has not changed. They are not stressed. They are not angry. They are not afraid. The council shook as the truth spread through the room. Humans were not fighting with adrenaline. They were fighting with control. Absolute control. The Velans, enraged by their repeated failure, formed a tighter group and launched a brutal coordinated strike. Plasma weapons aimed at the human diplomat this time, hoping to cut off the head of the so-called peaceful Terrans. But before even one raider could reach the diplomat, the human guards moved as if connected by one mind. One guard stepped in front of the diplomat and placed his hand gently on the air as if feeling for wind. The plasma bolt that shot toward them suddenly curved away, redirected by a movement so small no one even saw the technique, and the energy burned into the floor harmlessly. The diplomat did not flinch, did not look surprised, did not move. For him, this was normal. This was Terran training. This was why humans carried no weapons. The avian elder pressed a trembling hand against her chest as her psychic senses finally broke through the emotional shield around the humans. And she saw it. She saw the truth. She saw years of training under storms that could kill lesser species. She saw young humans learning to fight without weapons on cliffs where one wrong step meant death. She saw Terran instructors teaching their students that a soldier with a weapon becomes dependent, but a soldier with only his body becomes unstoppable. She saw ancient codes written on Earth after their centuries of war. A diplomat shall carry no weapon, for he must represent the peace we are responsible to protect. Her wings folded tightly against her body as she gasped, tears falling without her permission. They don't carry weapons because they were trained to be the shield, she whispered. And shields do not kill. Shields protect. Her words spread across the psychic channel, reaching every species in the hall, and the truth echoed with painful clarity. The humans were not showing confidence. They were showing restraint. Deep, heartbreaking restraint. One Velan raider, larger and stronger than the others, roared and swung his glowing hammer toward a human guard with enough force to break the bones of a giant reptilian warrior. The human caught the hammer in both hands. The hammer stopped instantly. No struggle. No shaking. No sign of difficulty. The human looked into the Velan's furious eyes with the expression of someone who wanted no violence at all. Someone who wished the world did not force him into this moment. And then he gently pushed. Just pushed. The Velan flew backward 10 meters and slid across the floor, unconscious. The entire galaxy watched helplessly as their assumptions shattered. Humans were not hiding weakness. They were hiding the truth to protect others from fear. They carried no weapons because the greatest danger they brought to the galaxy was themselves. And for the first time since the beginning of the attack, the human diplomat finally lifted his head and opened his eyes fully. And in those eyes, every species saw the same thing. Power, sorrow, control, and something far worse, a warning. The moment the human diplomat's eyes opened fully, the atmosphere inside the council hall changed so violently that it felt as if the air itself tried to step back from him, as if the silent power behind those calm blue eyes reached out and touched every living being present. The Velan raiders, who had been roaring with bloodlust just seconds ago, suddenly hesitated mid-charge as if something heavy pressed down on their chests, something invisible yet powerful enough to slow their movements and twist their instincts into confusion. Even the bravest raider felt it, a chilling, sinking feeling they had never tasted before. Fear coming from a species they had always underestimated, fear of the unarmed humans who stood before them like quiet storms made of discipline and sorrow. The council guards tried to regroup, shouting commands, activating energy shields, forming protective circles around their leaders, but nothing they did compared to the terrifying grace of the human guards. One human stepped forward, placing himself between an avian elder and a charging Velan, not with the posture of a warrior ready to kill but with the calm stance of someone who had accepted the burden of protecting even those who feared him. The raider swung a plasma blade toward the human's throat with enough force to cut through a starship door, but the human simply leaned his head to the left, the blade slicing through empty air by half an inch. His movement so smooth it looked like he had known the attack was coming before the raider even moved. He reached out, grabbed the Valen's wrist with a gentle grip that somehow locked every muscle in the alien's arm, and with a slow twist, lowered the blade to the ground as if helping the attacker put down a heavy object. The Valen screamed as his body folded, not from pain but from overwhelming pressure and helplessness, and the human whispered something so softly that even those closest could barely hear it. Stop. One word. Only one. And yet it carried such emotional weight, such exhaustion, such quiet pleading that even the attacker felt his rage melt into confusion as he collapsed unconscious. The avian elder stared at the human who had just saved her life, trembling as she realized the terrifying truth. Humans were not fighting the Velans. They were restraining themselves. Every movement, every strike, every breath was drenched in painful discipline, like a soldier walking barefoot through old wounds they had sworn never to reopen. The reptilian general finally found his voice again as he watched another human intercept a plasma spear aimed at a crystalline ambassador. The human caught it midair, not with strength but with perfect timing, redirecting the weapon so smoothly that the spear spun harmlessly into a wall. "This is not combat," the general whispered, shaking. "This is something else. This is art, or madness." The metallic insect commander's scanner flickered with numbers that made no sense. Human reaction time faster than any species combat training. Heartbeat steady under life-threatening attacks. Brainwaves showing emotional control that bordered on supernatural. He couldn't breathe as he processed the data. They're holding back. All of them. Every movement is calculated to avoid killing. They could kill the Velans instantly, but they won't. And that truth hit the hall harder than any explosion. Suddenly a massive crash rattled the building as the largest Valen, an elite berserker 3 times the size of a human, charged through the entrance, smashing 2 council guards aside with one swing, roaring with rage so intense the floor vibrated beneath his steps. His armor glowed with red energy, spikes cracking with heat, his eyes wild with the thrill of combat. He spotted the human diplomat standing unprotected in the center of the hall and roared from deep within his 9 hearts, sprinting toward him with terrifying speed. Every species screamed warnings, psychic barriers flaring, shields rising, energy blasts firing to slow the monster, but nothing stopped him. He reached the diplomat in 3 thunderous steps. And the human guards moved. Not running. Not jumping. Not panicking. Just appearing, like shadows sliding through light, one in front of the diplomat, one behind, one to the side, their formation so precise it looked like the universe itself had aligned to protect the unarmed man. The berserker lifted his burning axe high, the blade glowing white-hot, and brought it down with a roar that shook the crystal beams above. But a single human hand rose to meet it. A human hand. Flesh and bone. No glove. No shield. No weapon. The entire galaxy watched as the axe stopped. Not slowly. Not struggling. Not pushing. It simply stopped as if it had struck a mountain of pure emotion. The berserker stared in shock, unable to comprehend how a small human hand had stopped his strongest attack when no species in the galaxy had ever survived a full strike from him. The human looked up at him, eyes filled with something the Valen had never seen. Pain. Not physical pain. Emotional pain. Deep, heavy, ancient pain. The kind of pain that came from carrying too much responsibility for too long. "Don't," the human whispered. "Please." His voice cracked, just a little, but enough that even the berserker felt his rage tremble. For a single heartbeat, everything and everyone went silent. The Valen tried to pull back his axe. He couldn't. He tried to push harder. He couldn't. The human wasn't holding the weapon with force. He was holding it with intent, with calm, with control so absolute it felt unreal. And then, with heartbreaking gentleness, he pushed the axe back toward the berserker. The giant stumbled backward, eyes wide, feet scraping across the polished floor. He roared again and charged, swinging wildly, but this time the human stepped aside, guiding the massive aliens on past him with a soft touch, using the berserker's own momentum to spin him off balance. The giant crashed into a column, stones raining down as he fell to his knees. The human stepped toward him, sorrow in every line of his face, and placed 2 fingers on a nerve near the Valen's throat. The berserker collapsed instantly, unconscious but alive. The hall froze. The reptilian general whispered, almost afraid to breathe. "What are they?" The human diplomat finally spoke, his voice weighted with centuries of truth. "We send unarmed guards because weapons would only make things worse. A Terran with a weapon is dangerous." He turned slowly, eyes meeting every terrified species watching him. "But a Terran without one is far more terrifying." A cold silence filled the hall, emotional, heavy, unbreakable, because everyone finally understood. The humans had been trying to protect the galaxy not from the Velans, but from themselves. The silence that followed the fall of the Velan Berserker felt heavier than the sound of war itself, a suffocating silence that pressed down on every heart inside the council hall as if the universe had paused to witness something it was never meant to see. Dust hung in the air like frozen memories, drifting slowly through the faint beams of fractured crystal light, and every alien warrior tried to breathe but their chests felt too tight, too small for the truth they had just witnessed. The humans stood motionless once more, their black suits perfectly still despite the destruction around them, as if the chaos had passed through them without leaving a single scratch. But the sorrow on their faces, that lingered like a bruise on the soul. The human diplomat closed his eyes for a brief moment, and that tiny moment broke the last layer of denial in the council. He wasn't relieved. He wasn't proud. He wasn't victorious. He was grieving. Grieving not because the Velans were defeated, but because violence had touched the hall at all, because the galaxy had been forced to see the thing humanity tried so hard to hide. As the diplomat opened his eyes again, the crystalline speaker stumbled forward, his voice trembling like cracked glass. What kind of training allows a human to stop a Velan Berserker with one hand?" he whispered, barely able to speak. The diplomat inhaled slowly, painfully, as if answering would reopen an old wound. But before he could speak, the psychic avian elder stepped closer, her wings trembling as her voice shook with raw realization. "It is not strength," she whispered. "It is restraint. It is discipline. It is sorrow." She stepped even closer, eyes wide with a fear that was not of humans, but of the truth she finally understood. The humans do not carry weapons, because their bodies would turn weapons into disasters. Her words struck the hall like thunder. A reptilian general, known for centuries of brutal victories and calm leadership, suddenly collapsed into his seat, tail curling tightly around his legs as he whispered with dry fear. "If this is what their diplomats can do, what do their soldiers look like?" And the human guards reacted for the very first time. A flicker, nothing more, but enough for every alien with a warrior's instinct to feel the warning. One human guard looked away, eyes closing, jaw tightening as if the very mention of Terran soldiers stirred memories that were too painful to hold. Another guard gently exhaled, the breath shaking ever so slightly, not in fear but in emotional exhaustion. The metallic insect commander scanned the humans again in desperation, sensors clicking, numbers flashing and failing as readings broke under impossible data. "This cannot be real," he murmured. "Their muscle density, their neural speed, their emotional suppression, nothing in the galaxy compares. Not even the ancient war constructs." He stared at the diplomat. Why hide this? Why pretend to be weak? The human diplomat finally stepped forward, and the sound of his single step echoed louder than plasma blasts, louder than the berserker's roar, louder than the alarms still flickering weakly overhead. His voice, when he spoke, was soft. Too soft. The kind of softness that came from a heart carrying far more weight than any weapon ever could. "Because the galaxy needed to feel safe," he said. "Humans arrived late. Your empires feared us the moment you learned we came from a death world. You feared the conditions that shaped us. You feared what evolution forced us to become." He looked around the hall, meeting every terrified gaze with calm compassion. "So we hid it. We hid everything. Our reflexes, our instincts, our training, our past." The avian elder whispered, "Your past. What happened on Earth?" The diplomat paused, and that pause made every alien lean forward without meaning to. It was the pause of someone remembering ashes, remembering screams, remembering fields filled with smoke and skies filled with fire. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of 1,000 forgotten funerals. "Humanity fought itself for centuries," he said quietly. "Wars bigger than anything you have seen. Weapons that burned continents. Battles that scarred the oceans. For generations, our greatest enemy was our own reflection. His fists tightened slightly, knuckles pale, and even the human guards lowered their heads at the memory. We nearly ended ourselves, he continued. And when we rebuilt our world, when we finally learned the value of peace, we made laws. His voice cracked slightly, and for the first time, the galaxy heard a human diplomat's heart break in real time. Terran Law 1. A diplomat shall never bring a weapon into a peaceful hall. Terran Law 2. A guard shall protect life, even at the cost of his own. Terran Law 3. A Terran soldier shall only arrive if all peace has failed. The hall shivered. The reptilian general whispered, "If these are your guards, what are your soldiers, really?" The diplomat looked at him with eyes that glimmered with emotional shadows. "Terran soldiers are the reason we avoid war at all costs," he said. "If you saw what we are capable of when armed, when prepared, when desperate." He looked away, unable to finish the sentence, shoulders trembling with a pain deeper than any blade could inflict. "Terran soldiers are not deployed lightly," he finally said. "Because when they arrive, they do not stop." A cold breeze swept through the hall though the air vents were shut. The Valen raiders who were still conscious felt their hearts falter. The psychic avians felt their minds tremble. The council guards felt their weapons suddenly meaningless. And in the middle of that heavy silence, a soft alarm beep echoed from the diplomat's wristband, an alert from the Terran embassy. He glanced down and his face slowly drained of color. The guards instantly tensed, eyes sharpening, breath steady but heavy. The diplomat whispered, so quietly that only those closest heard him, "Oh no, they're coming." The entire council froze. Coming? Who was coming? Not diplomats. Not guards. Not peaceful envoys. No. Something worse. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Something Earth had kept hidden for centuries. Terran soldiers. The moment the human diplomat whispered that terrifying sentence, "They're coming," the entire council hall seemed to lose its balance, as if the foundations of the building itself suddenly remembered what fear felt like. A strange coldness rippled through the air, sinking into every alien's skin like invisible frost, and for the first time since the attack began, even the most battle-hardened warriors felt something deeper than fear. They felt dread. Pure, suffocating dread. The human guards, who had remained calm even while fighting the Valen raiders with empty hands, suddenly tensed in a way that made every species instinctively step back. Not out of anger. Not out of aggression. But out of something far heavier, concern. Worry. Even heartbreak. The reptilian general swallowed hard, his scales trembling as he stared at the diplomat's pale face. "Coming? Who is coming?" he demanded, though his voice shook so badly it barely sounded like him. The human diplomat's jaw tightened, and for the first time, there was visible panic behind his eyes. Panic not for himself, not for his people, but for everyone else in the hall. "Terran soldiers," he said softly. "They must have received our emergency beacon." The metallic insect commander's antennae froze mid-air. "But the law. Terran soldiers do not deploy unless diplomacy has completely failed," the diplomat whispered. His voice cracked, and that small crack terrified the room more than any weapon could have. The avian elder fluttered backward, wings trembling uncontrollably as she whispered, "Failed? But you stopped the attack. The guards defended us. They saved us. Diplomacy is not measured by victory," the human cut in quietly. "Diplomacy is measured by how much danger touches the people we vowed to protect. A single breach, a single attack inside a peaceful hall, is enough to activate the Terran emergency protocols." His voice grew even softer. "Which means the soldiers believe we are dead." That sentence hit the galaxy like a spear through the heart. The council speaker staggered backward, his crystal body flickering. "Dead? They think you all perished." "Yes," the diplomat whispered. "And when Terran soldiers think their own diplomats died," he didn't finish. He didn't have to, because suddenly, the lights above flickered violently, turning the hall into a nightmare of flashing shadows and trembling walls. A deep, resonant hum began to fill the air, not like the vibrations from the Valen attack. This was different. This felt alive. This felt ancient. This felt like the heartbeat of a predator evolution had tried to bury but humanity had embraced instead. The human guards exchanged glances, real glances this time, filled with fear, filled with urgency. One of them whispered under his breath, "We have to stop them, before they arrive." Another's hands shook slightly, not from fear of the enemy, but from fear of what would happen after the enemy came. And every alien noticed something new, something horrifying. Human guards, who moments ago looked like unstoppable living weapons, now looked like frightened children bracing for a storm they could not escape. The reptilian general, his voice barely a whisper, asked, "How many soldiers will respond?" The diplomat swallowed, the sound loud in the suffocating silence. "All of them." The council erupted into trembling gasps. "All. Every Terran soldier. Why? Why would they send everyone?" The diplomat exhaled shakily. "Terran doctrine is absolute. If a diplomat dies, Earth assumes someone has declared war on humanity." A terrible pause. And then, with a voice so quiet it felt like a prayer, he added, "And when humanity believes someone declared war, we do not respond with half-strength." The psychic avians felt their feathers curl inward as their minds flooded with visions, not from human thoughts, but from pure instinct, visions of burning skies, falling warships, ground shaking under the march of something colossal, darkness filled with glowing Terran eyes. One alien collapsed to his knees, choking. What are Terran soldiers like?" No one wanted the answer. The diplomat closed his eyes painfully. "They were trained differently," he whispered. "Not like us." He pointed at his guards. "These are peacekeepers. They fight to restrain. They fight to protect." His voice darkened. "But Terran soldiers fight to survive." The temperature in the hall dropped again. The walls groaned. The lights dimmed further. Every alien leaned in, terrified. "Survive what?" the avian elder asked, her voice trembling. "Survive Earth," the diplomat whispered. And suddenly the hall understood. The storms, the beasts, the diseases, the endless disasters, the violent evolution. Earth didn't train soldiers. Earth hardened them. A sudden boom shook the air. Not from inside. Not from the Velans. From the sky above the council hall. The sound echoed like an ancient god knocking on the ceiling of the universe. Every alien panicked, shouting, pointing upward, weapons raised. The human guards went completely still, breath frozen, eyes wide. Not in fear of the enemy attacking, but in fear of what was landing. Another boom. Louder. Closer. The diplomat whispered desperately, "No, no, no. They're too fast. We didn't have time." The ceiling trembled. Dust rained down. The lights exploded, plunging the hall into a dim red glow. And then the worst sound the galaxy had ever heard filled the air. Not a roar. Not a scream. Not a weapon. Footsteps. Heavy, synchronized, emotionless footsteps descending from above the hall like the approach of death itself. Every species dropped their weapons. Every psychic shield shattered. Every warrior froze. The human guards lowered their heads in dread. The diplomat whispered with a breaking voice, "The Terran soldiers have arrived." The footsteps grew heavier with every second, each impact crawling down the walls like cold metal fingers, each echo shaking the air with a pressure that felt almost alive, and the galaxy realized these were not the footsteps of ordinary soldiers. These were the footsteps of something shaped by a world that wanted humans dead since the beginning of time. The council hall trembled as dust drifted down like falling ashes, and the red lights flickering overhead made the shadows spin across the floor. Stretching long, reaching out like warnings no one could ignore. Every alien felt their instincts scream at them to run, to hide, to disappear. But their bodies refused to move, frozen by a fear older than logic. A fear carved into their bones the moment they first heard tales of the death world called Earth. The human guards, who had shown such perfect calm and emotionless discipline during the Valen attack, now broke that stillness. One's hand shook slightly, another closed his eyes as if silently begging the universe for patience, and a third looked toward the entrance with the expression of someone standing in front of a tidal wave too powerful to stop. The diplomat's face had lost its calm glow, turning pale with dread, shoulders trembling despite all his training as the vibrations of the approaching soldiers thudded deeper into the hall. "Listen to me," he whispered urgently, his voice cracked with fear no alien had ever heard from a human before. "Do not move. Do not raise weapons. Do not speak unless spoken to." The reptilian general nodded stiffly, every scale rattling like loose armor. What are they?" he managed to force out. The diplomat swallowed hard, breath shaky. "They are the last thing humanity sends when all hope dies," he whispered. "They are the ones who survived what no species should survive. They are what remains of Earth's darkest years." Another boom from above shook the ceiling, cracking a crystal beam. A few shards fell, striking the ground like frozen lightning. The metallic insect commander trembled violently. Why does everything shake when they walk?" "Because," the diplomat said, barely breathing, "the armor they wear is not armor. It's weight. Weight designed to shape their bodies. Weight from Earth's gravity chambers. Weight that would crush most species." The alien commander's limbs curled inward as terror tightened every joint. They train under torture." "No," the diplomat whispered. "They train under reality. Earth needs no torture. Earth is torture." A ringing sound echoed through the hall. Slow, deep, metallic, like giant hands dragging steel across stone. The avian elder clutched her chest, wings quivering violently. What is that sound?" she gasped, tears forming in her eyes again. "Their breath," the diplomat said, voice hollow. "Their helmets amplify the air they pull in, because they train in environments where oxygen is too thin to survive." Another sound followed, clicks, locks, shifting weight. The council guards raised shields instinctively, only for their psychic elders to shout at them to lower everything immediately. Everyone listened. No one wanted to risk provoking whatever was approaching. Finally, the heavy door at the far end of the hall began to bend inward. Not open, not slide, bend. Something behind it pressed gently, too gently for the strength behind it, and the thick metal warped like wet clay under a giant's palm. The reptilian general's heart nearly stopped. "No one should be able to do that," he whispered. "No one." The door caved inward with a deep groaning scream, and then a huge figure stepped through the shattered frame. Gasps, chokes, tremors filled the hall instantly. The first Terran soldier entered. Clad in midnight black exo-armor that shimmered faintly with hidden power, the soldier stood taller than any species in the room, helmet shaped smooth and emotionless, the visor glowing with a dim red light that looked like a dying star smoldering behind glass. The armor wasn't decorated with symbols or ranks, only scars, burns, claw marks, cuts, impacts, layer after layer of proof that this warrior had faced nightmares and walked away. Behind him, more steps shook the metal ground as additional soldiers entered in formation, each one a titan forged from discipline and trauma, each movement synchronized like a machine yet carrying an eerie human presence beneath the steel. The entire hall held its breath as the first soldier scanned the room, and every species felt that gaze like a cold blade pressed against their necks. Not killing, not threatening, just measuring, judging, looking for bodies, looking for the fallen, looking for their diplomats. The avian elder whispered breathlessly, they're searching." The diplomat finally stepped forward, hands raised slowly in a plea, voice cracking with desperate urgency. "Stand down," he said. "We are alive." For a full, terrifying moment, the Terran soldier did not move, did not breathe, did not react. The red visor stared straight at the diplomat, and a cold silence wrapped around the hall like chains. Then, slowly, the soldier lowered his weapon. But instead of relief, an overwhelming sorrow filled the hall as a deep, distorted voice emerged from the soldier's helmet. "We came because we thought we had lost you." The diplomat's eyes shined with emotion he tried so hard to hide. "I'm here," he whispered. "We're all here." The soldier stepped closer, each step a rumble of restrained power. "We detected a breach," the soldier said, voice heavy like thunder soaked in grief. "Protocol demanded immediate deployment." The human guards behind the diplomat bowed their heads, ashamed. "We handled the threat," the diplomat said. The Council is safe. The galaxy is safe. The soldier's visor dimmed slightly, almost like a sigh. Safe, he repeated. Because you fought. The reptilian general stepped forward, trembling. They fought without weapons, he said weakly. The soldier turned toward him, and the general instantly looked away, trembling so hard his knees buckled. Terran diplomats do not carry weapons, the soldier said. Because their lives are our weapons. The hall froze again. Every alien swallowed hard. And then the soldier said something that made the hall shiver with a new kind of fear. The kind that didn't scream, it whispered. If they had died, his voice grew colder. We would not have stopped. The building seemed to shake on its foundations. The diplomat quickly raised his hands. But we didn't die. Yes, the soldier said. And that is the only reason this galaxy is still standing. The hall stood frozen as the Terran soldier's final words echoed through the crumbling air. Words so cold and heavy that every species felt them settle deep inside their bones, spreading like frost along their nerves, making every heart beat in fearful silence. The soldier's massive frame radiated a quiet grief that felt more dangerous than any rage the galaxy had ever seen. Grief carved from centuries of defending a world that refused to be gentle. Grief shaped by sacrifices no alien could understand. Behind him, more Terran soldiers stepped into the hall, each one carrying the same sorrowful power, their armor whispering against the stone floor with the sound of thunder wrapped in silk. They stood in a formation so perfect it felt unnatural. Yet beneath the steel, their humanity pulsed like a heartbeat, painful, restrained, deeply controlled. The human guards who had fought the Velans with bare hands lowered their eyes, ashamed that their emergency beacon had summoned a force that the galaxy was never meant to witness. The diplomat inhaled shakily, stepping toward the armored titan with careful, trembling steps, knowing even a whisper could shift the fragile moment into unavoidable destruction. You came because you believed we fell, he said softly. But we live. We lived. We handled the threat. You are not needed here. The lead soldier tilted his head slightly, the red visor dimming in a way that felt almost wounded. Not needed, he repeated, the voice inside the helmet carrying an ache so deep the floor seemed to vibrate with it. We trained for years to protect you. We crossed light years in minutes to reach you. We broke protocol walls to save you. And now you say, the visor lowered. We are not needed. The diplomat closed his eyes in pain, understanding the emotional weight, understanding the soldier's heartbreak. You are always needed, he whispered, voice trembling with honesty. But not here. Not today. This hall is safe. These people are safe. The Terran soldier scanned the aliens. Not a single warrior could meet that gaze. Even the fearless reptilian general looked away, trembling, his claws tapping uncontrollably against the floor. For a long, suffocating moment, the hall stayed silent as the soldier absorbed the scene. The unconscious Velans, the ruined walls, the trembling council, and the unarmed human guards who had stood between life and death without blinking. Then, slowly, the soldier exhaled a breath that was half relief and half devastation. You still follow the old laws, he murmured, turning toward the diplomat. Even in danger. Even when violence rises. The diplomat nodded, eyes heavy with the truth of long blood-soaked history. We promised the galaxy we would never return to the old ways, he said quietly. And we promised ourselves. A flicker of sadness passed through the soldier's stance. And yet the galaxy still fears you, he whispered. Even when you protect them. Fear is not the same as hate, the diplomat replied gently. Fear can be healed. Hate cannot. The soldier lowered his helmeted head, considering those words. Behind him, the other Terran soldiers shifted slightly, but only slightly, because even their smallest movements felt like planets adjusting their orbits. The avian elder finally spoke, her voice fragile and trembling. Why does humanity fear itself so deeply? She whispered, tears shining in her glowing eyes. Why create laws to restrain your own strength? The diplomat looked at her with a pain so human it made every alien ache. Because we learned the truth, he said softly. Humanity's greatest enemy was humanity. A haunting silence spread like wind through empty streets. The diplomat continued. We destroyed our cities. We burned our skies. We scarred our oceans. We killed our future. Not because we were monsters, his breath broke, but because we didn't understand how powerful we truly were. Every alien listened with their hearts pounding. The diplomat looked around the hall, voice cracking. So we made new laws. Laws to save us from ourselves. Laws that would prevent our darkness from ever reaching the stars. His eyes drifted toward the Terran soldiers, giants of steel and sorrow. These soldiers are the last reminder of that time. The soldier's visor flickered, the red glow dimming to a softer shade, almost like a wounded heartbeat. We exist, he said quietly, so that diplomats can carry peace. The reptilian general swallowed, finally gathering the courage to speak. Then why, he asked carefully, do your diplomatic guards carry no weapons? Why do you send them into danger unarmed? The diplomat turned toward him with a soft, almost heartbreaking smile. Because unarmed humans remind us of who we want to be. Terran soldiers remind us of who we used to be. A chill ran through the hall. The soldier stepped closer to the council, his armor humming. If a Terran soldier arrives, he said, voice low and deadly calm, it means diplomacy has failed. It means something terrible has already begun. His visor brightened with a chilling glow. We are sent only when the world burns. The hall trembled. The psychic avians shivered. The insectoid warriors lowered their antennae. Even the Valen raiders who had regained consciousness crawled backward in fear. The soldier's voice darkened, echoing like thunder inside a tomb. And know this, he lifted his head slowly, red visor sweeping across every terrified face. If even one Terran diplomat falls, the entire hall leaned forward, breath held. We will remind the stars why they feared Earth. A silence deeper than death fell over the chamber. And then, a sharp alarm screamed through the air. A hologram flickered to life near the ceiling, crackling with static. A new threat. A distant explosion. A transmission from outside the station. Unknown fleet approaching, engines locked on Earth frequency, impossible signature detected, the human diplomat's face drained of all color. The Terran soldiers froze. The red visor fled. And the hologram finally sharpened into a horrifying, impossible image. A massive shadow drifting through space. A shape no alien recognized. But every human did. The diplomat whispered, voice trembling with fear beyond words, that's an old Terran ship design. But those vessels went missing centuries ago. The soldier took a step forward, armor humming like a rising storm. Those aren't Terran ships. A beat. A silence. A final breath. Those are the ones who left Earth long before we found peace. The alien empires gasped. The diplomats' knees weakened. The Terran soldiers raised their weapons. And the soldier whispered one final warning, they are not coming for the council. He lifted his head. They are coming for us.